Okay, this is chapter 4, part 2, and I'm going to go into chapter 5 quickly. Excuse me. Um, chapter 4, the rest of it is periodization, the macro cycle, mesocycle, what those are. They're in the book, explained easily. And I've already talked about the others. I've already talked a little bit about nutrition also. So I'm just going to go to chapter 5. Chapter 5 is psychosocial variables. You have a internal locus of control and an external locus of control. People that believe in the internal locus of control think they have a lot of say-so in their lives, a lot of nothing happens just by chance. And then conversely, people with the external locus of control feel like, they believe in things like luck and fate, and things just happen. So if they were to have an injury such as an ankle sprain or ACL, internal locus of control person would think that something they did wrong, something they had didn't do right, lost control over, so on and so forth. And then the external locus of control person would think, well, it was just going to happen regardless. I'm just unlucky. And not look at the mechanical issues or training or lack of training or strengthening as a cause. They just say, oh, it's luck or bad luck. So locus of control, trait anxiety, general disposition or tendency to perceive certain situations as threatening and to react with an anxiety response. Okay, you have to have a certain level of anxiety to do a sport, to perform. If you are too anxious, though, then it has a negative effect on your performance. If you're just right, then you can go out and perform very well. If you're not anxious at all, you could also have a poor level of performance. So you have to have a balance in your anxiety level before you do a sport. Depression, serotonin is the hormone related with depression. Serotonin makes you happy, and dopamine gives you pleasure. So that's the difference between those two hormones. But depression is most associated with serotonin levels. So the medications usually manipulate how much serotonin your brain releases, and the receptors acceptance of that serotonin. Signs and symptoms of depression is in a chart in chapter 5. It's a table and how individuals might express it. If someone comes, if an athlete or a person generally starts to give things away that they normally would not, things that were held close to them, they might be suicidal and have decided to carry out their suicide. I always say that this information with antidepressants, they take a long time to work, meaning they take 4 to 6 weeks to start seeing the effects. But what they do first is give a person more energy. That's why the warnings say if you have increased thoughts of suicide, stop taking the medication, because now the person is still suicidal, but they have the energy to carry out their plan. So that's why those antidepressant medications have those warnings on them. Competitive stress in the adolescent, this is from your book. You need to know the do's and don'ts. Parents put a lot of pressure on their kids to perform, and that's just what parents should do with children that are in competitive sports and not do to their children. Then you have the stress process. First step is the situation, the demands, constraints, opportunities. The second step is appraisal of the situation and personal resources. The third step is emotional response, the psychological and cognitive attentional components. Cognitive is your brain, okay, thought, reasoning. Then you have consequences. Consequences are behavioral, psychological, or health related. So those 4 steps, you need to understand those are the stress process and how they work together. There's also tidbits, guidelines for working with an injured athlete. Treat the person, not just the injury. This is what I was taught in school also. You can't just go in and do the ankle rehab. You have to ask about how are their classes going, how they feel about the injury. When an athlete is hurt, they don't know when they're going to return to play or if. They also are worried about how good they're going to be, someone taking their spot, how they're going to be looked at by the coach. Are they reliable still, or looked upon to come through in big situations? Scholarships, if they're at the collegiate level, come into play. Also scholarships if they're at the high school level. Are they going to lose it? Lose offers? All those things come into play. So when you're rehabbing injuries, you have to treat the whole athlete, not just the injury. And because of cultural differences, everyone is different. Their beliefs, what they eat, those things come into play. You know, nutrition is a part of healing and helps with healing, obviously. So that book, Time Out, Chapter 5.1, gives you tips on how to treat an injured athlete. Eating disorders, you have anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa. Signs and symptoms of disordered eating and what you need to know. Warning signs. Bulimia is when they binge purge. It means binging is eating everything in sight. Purge means the vomiting or using laxatives to have bowel movements to get the food out. Bulimics usually